Hey, welcome to the Inner Circle podcast, where growth minded leaders come together to build better businesses and better lives. I'm your host, Hector Alvarado. Here, we don't do theory, we share real lessons, real systems, and real strategies you can use right away. This is a community for people committed to growth, impact, and supporting each other on the journey. You're in the right room, my friends. Let's get started. We're
Yeah.
excited to bring to you today, here at the Inner Circle, the topic that is probably one of the ones that I get asked the most about how to impact change on. And this is the second line leaders, right? This is those leaders that are really the critical ones in your organization because they're the ones that get tasked with doing. And they're the ones that have to accomplish the heavy lifting a lot of the times in your organizations, but they can also be the ones that you may end up carrying and lifting if they can't lead for themselves. So today we're gonna get into that. We're gonna talk about those supervisors, the foremen, the coordinators, the managers that sit between you and the front line, right? And here's the key: is that your success really and truly depends on their leadership, and vice versa. Your stress usually comes from their lack of it, right? So we always get into these conversations about people and issues, and I always pull it back, because I think we always have to talk about the framework and what are some of the challenges that these leaders work in, right? And so that's part of the stuff that we're going to unpack today. But the truth is that most businesses currently stay small because the owner or senior leader is doing everyone else's jobs, or they feel like they have to do everyone else's jobs. And you often then find yourself repeating expectations and following up constantly or putting out fires that your leaders should have anticipated and or should have done it on their own, right? And so today we're going to talk about what are those common symptoms of weak second line leadership, so that you as an owner or as a business unit leader can spot this and really start to make some impact in your business, right? Now, here's some of the symptoms, right? They escalate every decision upward. I know I've worked with people where they're constantly like, hey, what do I do here? What do I do there? What do you think of this idea? And they're constantly checking up without making a decision. So they're constantly escalating. They wait for direction instead of creating direction. So they're often just sitting there. They know that the house is on fire, but they're not ringing the fire bell. They're not getting the extinguisher. They're just sitting there waiting, right? And they manage tasks. This is another symptom. This is critical. They're great at managing tasks, but not the outcome, right? And that's what the mind shift that you need to talk to them about. And here's one that I think is super critical. They generally avoid conflict. They become the
Mm.
buddies of the field staff, and they can't hold accountability. So that's a major one that you want to look out for when identifying symptoms of weak second line leadership. Okay. The next one is that they let poor performance slide. They let the bar get dropped down, and that then
Mm.
becomes the normal. And that is where you then start to spin more wheels. Okay. And you often feel like you're babysitting adults. Now, I know when I've gone into some organizations and they tell me, come fix this organization, come help fix this team because it's broken. And I go in there and I will tell you that generally the majority of the problem lies here in the second line leaders. That's generally the most impactful change that I can make when I go into organization and start to look to how do we reset it. So here's some of the leadership standards to reset and ensure that you get field experience out there. Three major gaps that show up again and again. Number one, not following through and dropping commitments. That's
Mm.
number one. right? And so how do I engage this? The first thing that I do is that I like to task them with show me your completed to-do list. And we start to monitor what are the completion rates on their to-dos and their tasks. And you'll start to quickly see those that avoid completing tasks on time. So they're not following through. Okay. The next one is excuses, blame games, and zero ownership. Who's worked for teams where you constantly like pointing fingers? It was that person. It was this thing. It was that. And I always tell people, listen, if you're gonna come to me and blame Superman on stuff, like I'm gonna find out the BS real quick, and we're gonna address it, right? Like we're not gonna let that happen. And the third one, which I touched on a little bit already, and I believe it's, again, one of the most critical ones, if not the most critical, is avoiding tough conversations. I often hear this, right? They're like, hey, but so and so's been here so long. He's earned it. We got to do this. We got to do that. Like, no, no, you don't, right? Everybody here's accountable. I'm accountable. You are. We're all here to do this, together. They have to step up. We all have to do that. So avoiding those tough conversations is one of those standards and resets that you as a business owner and leader have to be able to identify. Because if you don't, those weak leaders will drain your time and energy, right? They will do it. They will frustrate you. They will make you go crazy. And those vice versa, the strong second line leaders, they actually help and they multiply your capacity. They let you grow. They let you run with freedom, and you start to see this, with strong businesses, right? And so let's kind of anchor what are the 6 principles of real leadership, because I think this is important for us to walk away with understanding. You could be saying, Hector, all right, great, you're talking about weak leaders, good, but give me something that I can work with to identify who's got real leadership potential. And so I want to start off by saying real leadership is not titles. Okay? I want you to make sure you know that. It's not job titles, it's not descriptions, it's behaviors. It's in behaviors that you're going to identify real leaders. Okay? I have found leaders on part-time dock staff, real leaders. They would do stuff that the manager wouldn't do or couldn't do, right? And so that's the example that I want you to understand. Leadership is not titles, not job descriptions. It's all about behaviors. And so what are those behaviors? The first one is vision. It starts with vision. Okay? A second line leader is able to translate that company's North Star into day-to-day execution. They can tell you what it is you're trying to achieve without hesitation. They see it, they understand it, they get it. And what's cool about this is that because they get it, they can also create clarity for their teams and the people they work around with, right? They're able to communicate that and close that gap. So if you can ask your team members to explain to you vision, what's the vision of where you're going? And if they're aligned and they understand it and can communicate it back to you, there's point number one. You get it. This person's a leader. Okay. The next behavior that's super important is integrity. Those leaders that are doing the right thing, they do it without supervision. They don't need, they don't need you to be there having eyes on them. They just go about doing it. And what I really like about those that have integrity is that pressure does not give them permission to bend the standards or the rules. In fact, when the pressure's on, you generally see them lean to integrity even more, and they actually continue to do the right things even more. So that's something that is really critical about the second behavior. Okay. And the third one is actions. Leadership is proven through behaviors, as we talked about, and not intention. And so they take initiative. They move fast and they solve problems early. They're not sitting on the sidelines waiting for you to tell them the house is on fire. They can see the smoke and they're going to go out there and deal with it, right? That's how quickly they move. They're not waiting for you to give them those actions or directions. And the fourth one is empathy. They understand their people, right? Not to enable weakness, it's just critical, but to lead effectively. And what do I mean by this? Is look, they get to know their people at the core level. They understand what motivates them, okay? Not to become their buddy and friend, but really to understand what is their core value and how do you align their core values with the goals and core values of your organization. Because empathy without accountability is enabling. And so they recognize that. So they empathize. They recognize challenges and that we're humans and we're going to go through some challenges. But they don't stop holding accountability, right? And so good leaders are able to balance both of those. And I've had the opportunity to work with some great leaders, and I've seen it in action, and I can appreciate some of the teachings that they gave me, so that when I go out there, I'm able to build meaningful, relationships with people and really get to know them at their core level. Like, I want to know, what are their hobbies? I want to know, what are their aspirations? I want to know, like, what do they want to do in life in 5, 10, 15 years? What do they enjoy? What football team do they cheer for? Like, all those things, because that will create a connection that will allow me to, lead the right way and not have to deal with it. Oh, okay, this person just wants more money, or this person just wants to do this day shift. No, no, let's find out what other motivators they might have, and work with them on that. And the fifth one here is communication. 80% of problems come from unclear communication. And I've seen this so many times, so many times. Leaders must remember one key thing: you got to simplify, you have to clarify, and you have to over communicate the right things. Unfortunately, we as humans make habits of saying it once and think we have said it enough times. And that's unfortunately not true. We have to communicate several times, and sometimes it's different methods of communication. Understanding that some people may just prefer a phone call versus an email or a text, and vice versa. So you have to understand their method or their preferred method of communication so that you can really connect. And the last one, and most important, is accountability. This is the backbone of leadership. If a second line leader cannot hold their team accountable, or hold the line, as I like to say, they and you and your whole organization cannot scale. You won't be able to do it. You will be sitting idle, you will be sitting frustrated, and worst off, you will probably lose money. And that is going to be the biggest pain point that is going to wake you up, right? So these 6 principles together create leadership autonomy. That's where you want to get to. And I like to call these like level 3 leaders. And Willie, you know all about my scales of level 1, 2, and 3. We built them before in organizations. And like, when you get to that high performing team, that high performing leadership, they have autonomy. They own their results, they own their accountability, and they're getting things done the right way. And there's no babysitting, no micromanaging. All that stuff goes right out the window because they get it. And so they're driven through that. They're motivated through the right ways. And so when I say no babysitting, right, the goal of leadership is that simple: stop the babysitting. Folks,
Mhm.
stop allowing it. Don't you're not paid to be a babysitter. Like, that's not your job. And that shouldn't be the function. Your job's to lead. So
Mhm.
how do you lead, right? And that's to move people from dependence to independence, and then into ownership. Like, that's the key: is they become independent, they're self-reliant, and then they own it. They own their actions. And that is the structure that's required. That's how you really solidify the foundation that will allow your business to scale. Now, a lot of the times you might be thinking, well, I'm just starting off my business and it is just me right now, or it's just a couple of us. That's okay. Don't undermine this information, because this will become critical at the point where you start to maybe even bring in subcontractors as you scale up. And your subcontractors need to show these leadership behaviors as well, or they will also become part of your babysitting crew that you're going to have to deal with. And then, of course, as you really start to scale up, they will become critical. That line will become critical for you as you start to grow your teams and create the right culture in your organizations. So let's go through the decision making ladder. And this is the sort of concepts that I talk about, like the levels. Okay, this stuff really makes me quite excited because I'm about to actually launch it in an organization, and I'm really excited for this. So what are level one leaders? Well, I'll give you an example. They come to you and they say, "Hey, Willie, I have this problem. What should I do?" That's a level one leader. If you're getting that on and off, that's a level one leader. Recognize it, mark them, peg them. That's what it is. Okay. Here's a level two leader. They come to you and they say, "Hey, Willie, got this problem, but here's what I think we should do." Now they're recommending. Okay. That's a level two leader. They're making recommendations. They're not taking action quite yet, but they're like telling you what they think they should do, and they're just validating with you, but they're still checking in. So therefore, still level two. Okay. Now, as you get to level three, now we're talking. This is when we're cooking. Okay. This is when you're starting to show real leadership. And this is when they come to you with, "Hey, Willie, here's the problem. Here's what I did. And here's why. It's how I solved it. This was my reason behind it. And here's the outcome." Okay. Now they've decided, they've taken action, and they're doing it on their own without your input. They're coming to let you know, because in case they made the wrong decision, you're going to be able to correct them, right? But I caution on the correction piece. Let them fail a couple times. As long as they're not big F ups, you can generally live with it, right? But take the opportunity to allow them to make a couple boo-boos, because they're going to learn from them, and then they're going to get better every single time. So that's your level three leader. And that's where you start to get into high performing leaders. And then you get to the ultimate level, which is level four. This is where they own it. They come to you with, "Hey, Willie, we foresee that there's going to be an issue here. In about 2-3 weeks, this is what's going to happen, but don't worry. Here's the plan. Here's what I have in place. Here's what we believe are the risks within the plan, but we've got already option A, B, C, and D in place, and now there's accountability." They see it, they recognize the issue well in advance before it becomes a problem. They have a solution, and they have a backup plan to the solution. So now you're really cooking. That's a level four leader, right? So most second line leaders, unfortunately, guess where they sit in? They sit in level one. Now, here's what today's tutorial is really all about, is identifying your job in this. And your job is to take them from level one to level 3 and 4. If in fact you're serious about scaling and leading your teams the right way, right? Because if you truly want that freedom, and you want your business to grow the right way, and you want to create the right culture, you cannot allow your organization to sit with a bunch of level one leaders, because you'll never move the needle. You just won't. Okay. Now, you can tell me, "Okay, great, sweet. We got the plan. We know how to identify them. We know what they look like. We know what they should look like. How do I get it done? What do I need to put in place?" Well, here's what I think it starts with, and in my experience has been the most successful. Those that have worked, with me have seen this come to play in reality. And that is, we establish a weekly one conversation. It's a weekly touch point. I love these because they allow me to do several things. Number one, we check in on just real life connections. Like, how's the family? How are the kids? How is the trip? What's your vacation looks like? What are your aspirations? We do some of that, right? We connect on a personal level, and we start to build trust with each other, because that's critical. And then we get into the deliverables and the expectations, which means we review KPIs. So we have a weekly, review of a metric or a couple numbers that the individual's accountable for. We align priorities for the week. Hey, what are you working on? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the potential, gaps that you might have out there? What are some of the things I can help you with? Right? And so we talk about alignment and priorities. We talk about issues and people problems, and particularly if they're business unit leaders, right? Because I always like to be there for when it's a people issue problem, because it's critical that we look at the bigger picture when we talk people. So we always have that conversation. And these one-with-ones allow us to make decisions together, and they also allow for escalated decisions to be made if they need to be. But most importantly, we check on behaviors. We provide coaching on behaviors. This is a feedback loop opportunity. And that's what it's all about. It's coaching, leadership development, and not a task checklist. I don't sit there and be like, hey, did you complete this? Did you do this? Did you do that? No, 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 no. I'm not doing that. I trust that that leader is an adult and they're going to go complete their task list. I'm there to align priorities. That's it. Right? Like, hey, are we, are we working on that, that people development? Are we working on the culture stuff? How are you doing? Like, how are you feeling? Or do you need support? Like that, those are the critical sessions of that one-with-one that I want to address when having those conversations. Okay. Now, then becomes the autonomy rule, which evolves with having these one-with-ones. And that is, if they have the information, they have the authority, and they can decide, not you. And I said this before many, many weeks ago, probably many months ago, and I said knowledge is power, because when you have the information, you're empowered now to make decisions. Doesn't mean that you're going to make the right ones. You could make the wrong ones, but you're empowered to make some decisions. And here's where it's important, is that it's not me. I've now empowered, my leader to go out there and make decisions on their own. And an example of where I could use this is like, hey, this week, we have a challenge. We're receiving extra calls for more volume, more trucks. Like, what do you think we should do? Right? We probably will need about 10 more trucks this week. All right. Now that person knows a number. They can walk away with like, hey, yeah, let me make some calls. Let me see what people I can bring in early if they're resetting. Let me make some calls to outside carriers. But it now starts to get the gears grinding and thinking about solving the issue collectively. And you're empowering them, to be part of that solution, right? So that's how I generally like to look at this. The next one is around delegating outcome, right? So most leaders delegate like this. They'll sit with you and say, hey, Willie, I need you to do this. I need you to go complete this task for me. And go do these steps. So they might say, hey, I want you to, follow up with this customer ABC. Here's the phone number. Go give them a call. Okay. Now, great. That just creates followers because you've given them what they need to go do. Okay. Instead, great leaders flip that and they do this instead. They're like, hey, Willie, listen, man, we're really having problems with company ABC. I think we need to establish some lines of communication. I don't know what that looks like. What do you think? Now Willie says, oh, yeah, you're right. I know Bob over there at company ABC. I've got a good relationship. Let me give him a call. Let me see how we can iron this out. Completely different, right? Now they're leading. Now they're motivated to be part of that solution, and they're solving it. And they're not just taking orders from you. So that's something that I believe is critical, right? So in the real world, I've seen this where I might call on a dispatcher or a driver, and particularly when we've had issues in the winter because we're living it now. Drivers that refuse to chain up. I've seen this before. And I'll just go to them and just say, hey, Bob, like, why aren't you chaining up? What's the problem? You recognize that if you don't chain up, we're going to get kicked off of this site. And if we get kicked off of the site, we're going to lose the customers. And then we're going to have to lay some people off. I'm sure that's not what you want, right? Like, you don't want that impact. Now, Bob now knows that what we're looking for is zero preventable stucks, like truck stucks now. And he needs to do something about it. So he's able to communicate to me, all right, you're right, like I need to start doing this, and start to communicating with other guys around here to chain up, because we don't want this to happen to others, right? So it's about engagement and really making sure that everybody understands that they have autonomy and they have the empowerment to make those decisions. Now, autonomy is not a personality trait. I want to clarify this. You're not going to find this autonomy thing on certain people. It is learned through leadership behavior. It is learned. Let me say that again. You learn that skill. So your autonomous second line leaders show you this by anticipation. They don't wait for the fires. They're thinking ahead. They show it through initiative. They move first. Okay? Through clarity is also another one that they show it through, because they communicate expectations proactively. And what I mean by that is they're not telling you expectations, they're telling third, fourth, fifth liners the expectations. And ownership, they solve problems and report completions. Okay? Accountability is where they start to enforce the standards. And the last one where they'll show it to you is alignment. They connect decisions always back to company goals. So to build these, to build the clarity, again, we go back to setting expectations so that they're clear and not misunderstood. We review those behaviors weekly through our one-with-ones, what we talked about, because this establishes repetition. And leadership requires repetition until it sticks. I'm a crazy gym goer. I love the gym. And why I love the gym is because it allows me to consistently just be repetitive in my way of life. So I have a structure. I do my workouts the same way every week. And then I take those learnings from the gym and I apply them to my business life and to my regular life. So I'm one of the most boring persons that you're going to be around with when it comes to eating, because I eat almost the same stuff every single day for 6 days a week, because it's just repetitive, right? It's repetitive. I like that piece. I have structure around my days that builds that. And then what it does is it allows me to teach others the power of repetition so that they can become truly focused on leadership. Okay. And that's really important for me. And one of the other pieces that I think that evolves as a leader is, and I said it earlier, is that it starts like with identifying that job titles don't make someone a leader, right? Leadership behavior does. And I really don't care about someone's job title. I don't care. I will task someone with an accountability, or I will allow somebody to grow and be a leader if they're at the very bottom of the organization, because I don't care about titles. I could care less about my title. I don't care if I'm the janitor of the company. I will always try to lead. And that's something that was taught to me since I was a little boy. And I just want to bring that, to my style of leadership. So, I like to encourage people to look at the same thing. Don't sit there and think that just because of a title, that's the only reason or the only way that you can lead. That's not it. It's all about behaviors. Now, the multiplier effect is that your business will never grow faster than your second line leaders. We talked about that earlier. You cannot be everywhere. I only see one Tyler. I only see one Eileen. I only see one Peter. There's only one William. There's only one of me. So you cannot solve every problem, and you cannot be the only source of accountability. You have to multiply that. Through multiplication, you will get a lot more done, because your growth equals the combined leadership capacity of your second line leaders. So as you're growing as a leader, you're developing others, that spreads out, and you're going to have more leader bandwidth in your organization, right? So we're going to bring it back to the 6 principles, because I want to make sure you get these notes, right? And so vision equals that they align and they cascade. Okay, that's critical. Secondly, integrity. They act without supervision. You don't need to be watching them to do the right things. Their actions. They move the needle daily. This is a consistent thing. They're not stopping. They don't only just do it once. They move it consistently, daily. They have empathy. So they understand their people, they connect with their people, they make those genuine connections. Their communication, they create clarity, accountability, they enforce the standards. They're not ones that are going to lower the bar at your business unit. They certainly lead and ensure that the standard is always high. And so when you have second line leaders that embody all these, your business at that point is cooking. That is when it becomes scalable. So if you want your business that runs without you, and I hear this a lot with owners in particularly, then you must build leaders who lead themselves. You have to train them though to think for themselves, and you have to coach them to decide. And then here's the big one, you have to empower them to own their outcomes. You must empower them. You can't sit there and tell them that they can do something and then give them shit later. You know, if it didn't work out to your state, you have to empower them. You have to let them learn. They will learn, they will make mistakes, but they will get it done right eventually. And that's what starts to build trust and momentum and it gets things going. So if you have if you're cautious about empowering somebody, then give them empowerment to the amount that you're comfortable with so that they don't make big boo-boos and that it really affects you. But empower them, let them learn, okay? And then develop them using those 6 leadership principles that we talked about. All right. That's how you scale your company. And that's how you stop babysitting. And that's how you create true leadership at every level. So, like we talked about second line leaders. This is something that I know, Willie, you and I were talking about it just before the call, and we talked about one particular guy. And I'm curious to know, like, what's been your experience with second line leaders, and how have you dealt with the challenges that come with developing them and leading them, and even recognizing them at their different levels? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to unpack here, I would say. From my side, I had to first learn how to be a leader myself.
Right.
Then I was finally able to also instill these principles that you just talked about, where to me, it starts with having that clear vision and that clear communication, what that expectation is of that leader. And then, like you said, if that leader comes to you and just asks you, man, I don't know what to do here or whatever, um, me as a leader now, instead of trying to answer what they have for a problem, it's going to be a question back to them. What do you think we should be doing? And so you
Hmm.
can actually teach other leaders to become leaders and start putting it back to them so they start thinking for themselves.
Absolutely. That's a good practice to do. I like it, Willie. That's awesome. Now, can you
And
think back of a good leader, like a good second line leader?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely had some very good second line leaders and also some not so good. And I was always wondering like why don't they get it? But that's the part what you explained today here was I thought about, man, this is the perfect framework if somebody is working currently in a company and would like to be a leader one day. Like you can start thinking how you can bring solutions to the table and recommend what could be done. I can guarantee you that will get you a raise and also another position.
Absolutely. You're right about that. Because when you start to stand out in those level 3, level 4, like the high performing levels, man, like Willie, you as an owner, you're hiring those guys, you're promoting them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. Now, what is like one big challenge that you see with second line leaders? Like what is the one thing that you in your experience that you think holds people back from growing?
Hmm. Yeah, I think like you said, you have to tell them or let them know it's okay to mess up, but we want you to lead. So don't be afraid to try.
Yes.
And then yeah, if something goes sideways, well, let's figure that out and make sure we learn from it. And
Hmm.
and so that's a practice I always had in place where I said, yeah, let's not be afraid to mess up. Let's just do our best and leading. And yeah, I would say that would be a big one for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a key one, Willie, because I know from working with you in the past, it was something that was really seen as a positive throughout the organization because people felt like, hey, we're gonna learn from this. Sure, we're probably gonna get our hands slapped here, but as long as we don't make the same mistake and we learn from it and we take something positive from this, let's go run with it. Like let's make it happen.
I can tell you one thing, if you react upset and angry and kind of do it yourself idea next time, well, you're not going to build any leaders in your business.
That's right. That's so true.
That's an issue in a young entrepreneur mindset in the beginning, or that was my biggest issue.
It's funny you mentioned that because I saw this play out in action literally this week. I saw a
Mm,
business owner who just scolded, like, I mean, scolded a supervisor on email and
mm,
was like, I genuinely felt bad for this individual, and so I had to call the owner, and I was like, "Hey, you got to take that down. Like that's not how you build leaders. I get it. The supervisor made a royal f up. Like we get it, but those conversations have to be toned down. You have to have a human conversation. Explain the impact. What was the major f up? This is how it affects us as an organization and as a team, and here's what you should have done. But provide learning opportunities, right? And do that privately, not not in a public setting where everybody else gets to see it. And some owners forget that, and they know it's their business, they're the boss. But look, everybody knows you're the boss already.
mm.
You don't have to let the world continue to know that. You're already in that spot. And I can tell you that not only do owners do this, but unfortunately, high executives, senior executives have that behavior as well. And it ends up impacting, sort of the future of the organizations because they stunt the growth of those second line leaders. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Inner Circle. If something in today's conversation resonated, inspired you, or gave you a breakthrough, please share it with someone you care about. The right idea at the right time can change someone's business and their life. So make sure you follow the show, leave a review, and stay connected with us because this community is built on relationships, real support, and real growth together. Remember that clarity means nothing without action. So choose one insight from today, put it into motion this week, and notice the shift. Thank you for being part of this journey, for showing up for your growth, and for being part of the Inner Circle community. See you in the next episode, and let's keep growing together.